My name is Mohamed Baraka. I'm the Managing Director of Synergy Lubricant Solutions, a company dedicated to giving solutions to lubricant problems in the industry. Today we want to talk about radiator coolant. Radiator coolant traditionally was water, purely water, and water was supposed to transfer heat from the engine into a radiator where it is cooled and returned into the engine. However, it was found that during the winter time the water would freeze and therefore it would not be able to circulate. And with the time it was discovered that if water is mixed with glycol, the freezing point of that fluid would be much lower than the normal water. For example, water freezes at 0 degrees. The coolant mixed with glycol at 1 to 2, in the ratio of 1 to 2, would freeze at minus 22 degrees. And if it's 50-50, it would be a minus 50 degrees. So that solved the problem of freezing. However, the other problem that was noticed was rusting, because a lot of the metal parts are made of iron, and with the water they will rust. And rust is not very good, because once it gets into the radiator, it works as an insulator, so the heat is not transferred and the radiator boils. Therefore, it would not be an effective coolant. It was also discovered that to solve this problem, you needed an anti-rust additive into the coolant. An anti-rust will prevent the rusting of the cooling system. For example, here you can see what would happen when you use water, or even if you use low quality coolants. A lot of the low quality coolants that you have in the market are actually pure water plus a dye. They don't have an anti-rust additive in it. So it was necessary you put an anti-rust additive in the coolant to prevent the rusting of the cooling system. The coolant that is mixed with the glycol is called Antifreeze, and those are the principal coolants that are used in the temperate climates where winters are below 0. In tropical climates, we don't have 0 temperatures. We don't go below 0 temperatures in most places. And therefore, glycol is an unnecessary expense, because glycol itself is very expensive. And that perhaps would be the cause why many people in this country today still use water in the radiator. Synergy Lubricants is among the first companies to have introduced a coolant that does not require glycol. It's a water plus anti-rust and plus anti-scaling additive. This will do everything that the coolant is supposed to do to transfer heat and to keep the system free from rust and from scaling. But it's much cheaper and then the Antifreeze coolant. And since we introduced it, it's become a very popular coolant, and I think it has made many people who would otherwise not afford the Antifreeze coolant now convert their radiators to coolant. A radiator, to face it, it's supposed to last the life of an engine, or at least 20 years. But many radiators in this country had to last 3 years because they rust, the water leaks out, you've got to keep topping up, the engine heats up, the rust is deposited in the cylinder head will crack and the water will get into the engine, resulting into a knock, or it can actually rust the cylinder liners and cause pinholes so that the engine has no compression, forcing you to make a very expensive overhaul of an engine. I think that could be avoided when a good quality coolant is used. Now, one thing that we have realized is that many coolants on the market, they are cheap, and the reason they are cheap is just water plus a dye. And what we recommend is that if you have a coolant that you want to use for the first time, take 2 nails, put it in a bottle, add on to it coolant, and let it sit for a week or 2, and you will notice that if it's a good coolant, it will not rust. If it's a bad coolant, the nails will rust. This is an example of samples that have been kept in the bottle with the coolant. You can see this coolant, although seems to protect rusting, but there is a lot of deposit that comes onto it, and this means it will clog the filter and can cause the starvation of water in the system. So this coolant is no good. This coolant was originally green, but you can see with time the amount of rust that has accumulated. The color is gone, the rust has accumulated because the coolant does not have adequate anti-rust. Similarly, this coolant, the dye itself, it was originally red, and you can see it has now turned into clear. The dye is gone, the nails are rusty, and you can see the amount of rust that has accumulated. This is a good quality coolant. This is the Petsar coolant, which has been with these nails for about 6 months, and to date you cannot see any rust, you cannot see any rust. The dye is still stable and still the same color, and incidentally we have two colors of the coolant, the red one and the green one. They have equal protection for your radiator, and that's how you should be able to protect your radiator using the right coolant.